bring up our speaker this month, Jim Hume. He's the owner and principal of the Fire Group that he founded in 2004. So after all, I'm just going to turn it over to him. Jim.
All right, awesome. Cool. Thank you. I don't project as well, so can everybody hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Excellent. I don't know how all this is working as far as acoustics go, but I've never done a talk in an aquarium before, so there's a first. So I'd say we have a number of people and fish watching today, but you know, I think when asked to be a part of this, and when we got the term honesty, you know, I was both excited about it and a little nervous about it as well, because honesty unpacks a lot of different things, and especially when it comes from a guy who comes from what's basically an advertising agency, that could show a little bit of conflict. But you know, what honesty does, what it excites me about it, is the fact that honesty should be easy, right? It should be just what's in your mind at the time, and you should come out with the truth all the time. What's dangerous about it is it requires a lot of vulnerability, and you know, just kind of putting yourself out there, and we're not a society who does that very much. So let's take the basic question that you guys get probably dozens of times every day. How are you? What's the patent answer? What does everybody say? Good or fine? Yep. This one's mine. I say fine. Every time. That's just my pat answer. And what that is that's covering up a lot of truth, right? It is, I'm not fine every day. You're not good every day. We have complicated lives. We have, you know, I had a difficult morning today. I had a difficult night sleeping last night, and I have a lot to do today after this as well. So I could say I'm fine, but there's, you know, something else going on that is a little more truthful, but that's going to take hours to unpack, and I don't want to do that to you today. But just know that we all have that filter, right? And that shows up throughout our lives. Whoops. Including on my mouse. So we all put our best face forward. And nowhere can we see this more than in social media, where everybody just has this wonderful filtered life that everybody should be envious of. Everybody has the perfect relationship. You know, I often joke that it's those people who have the perfect relationship that you have to be on the watch for, because they're all just, I love you, and tagging each other, and it's like, it's ridiculous. But at the same time, you know, we put them on death watch pretty quickly. But, you know, everybody has the perfect life. Nobody has any problems. All is fine. And you know, they keep telling you that, so they're very serious about being perfect. But the problem with that is that we all get this very strange perspective of everyone else's life. And we don't get to really know each other very well. And, you know, it's a shame, because my mouse is not working. We don't ever reveal our true selves. Who do we reveal our true selves to? A few friends, very close friends, maybe some family members, maybe they don't even know. So truth is something, and honesty is something that we reserve to just a few. But those that we share honesty with, those that we are in touch with, we get very, very close to. We build relationships that last, and those are gold. Now, you may be thinking, what does all this have to do with what we're here for today, which is creativity? I'm getting there. As soon as my mouse stops freaking out. Because our true self is what makes us interesting. The more we know about each other, the more interested we are, the more questions we have. That first initial thought of, I'm good. Well, if you spend an hour with somebody and get to know them, things start to get interesting at about minute number 55, and then you want to stay with them longer, and then you start to unpack real things, authentic things. You start to open up and be a little more vulnerable. Oh, driving me crazy. Yes. No. So what does this have to do with marketing? What does it have to do with creativity? What does it have to do with what I do every day? Well, I argue that it has everything to do with that. And we'll talk about why. So I grew up and I loved advertising. I wanted to do nothing but. So I got inundated every day with jingles, with mascots, with all of these things that just came to life. But it was all lies and it was all spin. Apparently, a cereal called Sugar Smacks is not part of a good, nutritious breakfast. I was shocked. And then they kept telling us to buy things, and these things will make you better looking, and you'll have better relationships because of this product. I bought it hook, line, and sinker, and it excited me so much that I wanted to be a part of the industry. And when I started as a young copywriter, I bought in, and I ceased becoming the manipulated, and I started becoming the manipulator. And what we would do is we would really kind of use the tricks of creativity to create sort of this hazy truth that it's fun, it's humorous, it's thought-provoking, but it would kind of hide what the real truth of any product or service was. And creativity was the vehicle to make these things seem okay. I didn't believe that the cereal was bad for you. I didn't believe that all of these things. And as soon as I started making those things, I would just use creativity to one of my first accounts was a liquor account. Actually, one of my second accounts was Stroh's, back when they were here in Detroit as well, and we were selling alcohol, and probably to minors, and probably in ways that just didn't feel right. Really the whole foundation of where I was in the industry was built on lie. Forwards. Well, fast forward to today. Marketers don't own brands anymore. So all of this spin and all of this exercise of creativity, it no longer really exists. It can't exist. The old model still exists. You still see ads, you still see commercials that still try to push lies and spin on you, but we're a little more savvy than that today, and we have more tools today. So this is changing the way that we act as consumers, but it's also changing the way we act as a creative community as well. So these two worlds are starting to come together. We've got this filtered world that used to exist that showed all of these sort of lies and spin to kind of sell you new things. And that's clashing with this very informed world. We are a moment away from knowing anything about everything. We are becoming more and more informed. That's taking power away from the marketers more and more. So you can't just put things out there that are untruths. You'll be found out immediately. And I argue that's a very good thing. This transparent world that we're living in opens up the door to authentic truth, nothing else. And consumerism has changed as well, just in terms of what you buy and where you buy it. What's the first thing you do? You used to, back when I was a young kid, you would go see, you would be fed commercials, you would be fed all of these lies, and then you would go out and you would buy something. No questions asked. Today, where's the first place you go if you want to buy something? And what do you look for? Reviews. So those reviews are telling the actual truth, unfiltered from what we want to tell you as marketers. So you're getting it from peers. No longer are marketers able to kind of tell that story, that lie. They have to be honest to be in sync with what you're finding out there in the wilderness. Whoa, 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 whoa. So, if my 8-year-old self wanted to go see if Sugar Smacks, which are now rebranded as Honey Smacks, by the way, just to make them seem a little healthier, a little more of the earth. It's still just corn syrup, but I bet if I look this up, it's not going to say good things. So it's not part of a good, nutritious breakfast after all. And then for the second part here, 77% of shoppers base purchase decisions on reviews from other customers. Now, the only shocking thing about this statistic is it's this low. Because everybody that I've talked to and everybody that I survey, that's the first thing they do. They don't trust brands, they trust peers. They trust the community around them. So, really, if something gets 2 stars and has a bunch of bad reviews, you're not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But if it reinforces the truth that that brand is saying, then you'll be on board. So as marketers, our powers of persuasion are just gone. They don't exist anymore because there are other ways and other tools that people go and search for things. Again, I say that's a very good thing because our industry was a little bit too full of half-truths, quarter-truths, zero-truths. And now we're forced to kind of reckon with the fact that we have this parallel world that is telling nothing but the truth as consumers see it. So what do we do? What is the role of creativity in marketing today then? If we can't have those tools, if we can't have those little tricks and jingles to trick people into doing things, what are we doing? And where's the future of our industry going? These are questions that I ask myself a lot. So what we're left with is truth. What we're left with is honesty and vulnerability. We're left with capturing true stories of real things and real customers and real experiences. And then we have to build and we have to foster communities together to kind of help build and create that audience of evangelists and fans of your brand. And we have to reinforce reality instead of try to spin around reality. And then, we have to make sure that we take what's real and what we hear and what we hear from customers and what we hear from inside companies. We have to package that so that the outside experience and the actual brand experience are the same thing. So, as an agency, we go culture deep. And what going culture deep means is that we're no longer just putting paint on the side of the building and saying, hey, it's a little bit prettier today. What we have to do is we have to go to the foundation of the building and really kind of figure out, what makes this brand, what is this authentic brand all about? And then we have to reinforce that back into the culture. And we do that before we even do any sort of design or copywriting or storytelling or anything like that. We have to affect the culture inside companies to make sure that they are willing to be the best version of their brand so that when they go out to the world, they can be experienced in that way. So how do we do that? We start with engagement. And when we engage inside companies, inside organizations. We talk to everybody. So we're not just talking to the C-suite. We're not just talking to the marketing group. What we're doing is we're talking to everybody across an organization, especially the people on the front line who actually deal with customers. So sometimes in B2B, that is salespeople. In more B2C, that might be somebody who at the retail level. But making sure that we understand what their day-to-day looks like, what their stories are, what their voice is. We also engage with customers. Because again, we talk about how customers hold the keys to your brand. They are the true story of what your brand is all about. So we do surveys, we do conversations, we do focus groups. We want to make sure that we go pretty far and deep because as I mentioned before, people don't really start to get vulnerable and start telling their truth and being honest until several minutes into a conversation. They're filtered, you got to get past the filter. So our conversations tend to be a half hour long, sometimes an hour long. We get to those deeper truths that start to get exposed once you get past the corporate speak, once you get past all the things that I'm supposed to say. Well, what's the truth behind the filter? So we work hard to get behind that. And then we build a framework and not a campaign. So what we do is we build what's the look and feel, what's the voice, what are we trying to say, how do we ask questions, how do we dialogue with customers, what's the voice that we're putting forward, and what's that look and feel that we're going to capture all of this in. And once we establish those rules that are authentic to the brand, then we're free. We're free to deliver that in all sorts of different ways. But what we don't do anymore are kind of this campaign thinking, which is putting campaigns out there to, again, spin and trick and get attention. That's not what marketing is all about today. And we move away from that entirely. We still use some of the old tools, but at the same time, we tend to be a little more grassroots, a little more low-key in terms of letting them come to you and experience your brand, as opposed to you pushing some message that you don't believe in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 different case studies that we were involved with, and they're 3 very different types of organizations. Marillac Cabinetry is one of the nation's leading brands of cabinetry. Been around for a long time. And really the way that we came to start working with them is that they were working with a big agency out east, spending a lot of money, doing the old consumer method of kind of pushing and selling people. They had a celebrity chef kind of selling them and saying these are wonderful cabinets or whatever the message was. Several problems in that. Number one, they were okay cabinets, but number two is that consumers don't act that way. So nobody goes and if you want a new kitchen and new cabinetry, you don't go and you don't request Marillac cabinets. What you do is you go to a kitchen or bath dealer or a showroom and you say, I want a new kitchen. So very quickly we learned that our audience went down by about 100-fold. So we're not talking to a nation full of consumers anymore. What we're doing is we're talking to a dealer network. Furthermore, when we started talking to the dealer network and we started talking to the people inside Marillac, we learned that this was a pretty cool company years and years ago. It was run by a guy named Orville Marillac, and he ran the company in a way that he built relationships. And those relationships led to cabinetry. But what we were able to do is we were able to kind of get to that authentic truth of what they used to be and kind of find those fibers within the company that were those authentic truths that we were able to then kind of wrap a brand back around. And it was less about consumer trickery, and it was more about building a community inside the walls. So through storytelling and through sort of packaging all of these kind of conversations with dealers, we were able to just get really close to them, and we held events around the country. So literally meeting directly with them and reintroducing the brand in that way, which is very different than doing it on HGTV. So nobody sees it, but it's happening, and we're actually building a closer network with all of these people. And then they're more apt and willing to sell Marillac and work with them. So just in this case study alone, we reduced the marketing budget by over half because we were no longer doing all of that work to consumers. But we were able to boost sales in the first year alone between 20 and 25%. And it's not because we were doing something magical. In fact, we weren't trying to do any tricks. What we were trying to do is just get the authentic truth, package it in a way, and talk to the right people and have those deep conversations before, during, and after. So engaging with the right people. It's not rocket science, but it is being honest. And being honest was also about, we have problems and we're trying to get through them. We're trying to work with you on them. So it's not, we're the best. It is, we're not great. We know that, we're working on it. And let us help you, let us work with you to help us get there. So it is a brand that was revolutionized by going backwards. And the results obviously were pretty good. I'm going to talk about the next one, Diplomat Specialty Pharmacy. This is in Flint, Michigan. It's a quiet little multi-billion-dollar company that is the nation's largest independent specialty pharmacy. So what a specialty pharmacy is basically they help patients with chronic conditions, cancers, autoimmune diseases, very expensive medications, usually 50, 100, 150 grand a year type medications. And they basically help patients, they send the medication, they help them through, so they are sort of the corner pharmacy on steroids, if you will. But what they do is they do things quite differently. So their major competition are a Walgreens specialty, a CVS specialty. But what Diplomat does that's special and beyond that is because they're independent, they can work a little bit outside the lines. So when we were interviewing and trying to draw stories from them and their customers, we learned things like there was a story in Alaska of a patient that needed medication. They ran out. Within 24 hours, they were not going to make it. They needed this to live, to survive. So the CVS and Walgreens of the world would have said, hey, it's Friday afternoon. We can get back to you Monday. We'll send something out. But this is rural Alaska that this person was in. So what Diplomat was able to do, and they had hundreds of stories like this, what they were able to do was they were able to find a commuter plane, get the medication there. Then they found a guy on a dog sled who could take it up to the middle of nowhere in Alaska. And it's like, when you hear stories like that, suddenly you realize this is what this brand is all about. And we also, we found that we uncovered stories of not the typical pharmaceutical and pharmacy type thing where you see all of these people who have gone through these major issues and diseases and come out the other end, and now I'm running marathons, now I'm climbing mountains, now I'm doing all of these things. What we wanted to kind of show them is that's not what your patients are. Your patients are mostly at home, alone. You might be the only person they talk to every month. So really kind of capturing that story of where they are mentally and what those true stories are, because they don't want to be marketed to and saying you must be a loser because you're not doing a marathon. What they want to see is that you empathize with them, that you see their truth, that you see and you're honest with them and say, you know what, we're here to help, and we're here to be that touch point along the way, and we're here to serve not those that are winning, but those that are possibly struggling. So we were able to build a brand around that, and it's a very, very complicated ecosystem of audiences and all sorts of things, but they all have that patient in common. So we were able to wrap a brand around the patient. One slide. All right. So next one is a little more of just being honest in a completely different light, because this one had everything to do with a city, Ypsilanti. Are you all familiar? All right, more or less. Yeah. Kyle lives in Ipsy. So what we learned through this, and this is with the Ypsilanti CVB, but we wanted to go broader with it because the city had a little bit of an image problem over the years, and it also was very disconnected. So the city has a CVB, they also have city government, they have a township, they have the University, the Eastern Michigan. So they had all of these different components. They never got along. And they all had different messages that they wanted to kind of push forward. So we saw our job as an agency to kind of wrap our arms around all of this, all of these different voices, and try to find some things that were authentically true about all of it. And what we learned is that that's not really a thing. So we learned that they had history museums, they have a lot of quirky, creative loft type spaces, they have independent restaurants, they have all of these things that when you kind of put them together, it really relates to really authentic experiences. So what we wanted to do is we didn't want to brand this thing. We didn't want to be like another CVB brand where it's like, Nashville, come check us out. All of those types of just cliche type taglines. What we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of build what I said is a framework called Ipsy Real, and then create some starter tools for it, but then spend no money and just let it out into the wilderness and let them own it. So what Ipsy Real is today, it's basically one person in charge of social media and then a whole community that then latches onto it. So they use social media and they're huge on Instagram. So go check out hashtag Ipsy Real on Instagram. You're going to see what Ipsy is all about. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the little restaurants, all of these things that we couldn't possibly as an agency help them put together. Not in the mosaic and in the scale that they're doing it. So, what we were able to do was we were able to create the beginning of a story, chapter 1, and now it's a book that is kind of endless and telling more and more chapters and increasing in size. And when we worked with them, probably about 3.5, 4 years ago now, just gave it a push out the door. We haven't touched them in 3 years, and it's grown to this harvesting of all of these multiple stories kind of coming together. So we just sit back and watch it, and it's pretty fun to do. And it's about as honest as you can get. So just a few takeaways. These are probably obvious at this point, but anything real is better than contrived. So, and this hurts me as I mentioned. My background is I was a copywriter, so that's what I was trained to do, was to spin things, was to kind of alter them and make them sound better than they actually were. But I realized that all of those things that I did back in history were really pretty disposable and actually counter to what the brand success should be all about. So now when I think about brands, I don't think about what interesting and quirky things I can do to create something. All I have to do is capture. And capturing now is something that it seems a lot easier, a lot more authentic, and it's proven to be a lot more successful as a result. And then truth is always better than spin. People and companies get themselves in a lot of trouble by trying to spin their way out of a lot of issues. What studies show is that when people tell the truth right away, you actually, going back to the beginning, you bond more with your audience. If you're actually out there and saying, you know what, we have warts, we have problems, here they are. That's that 55th minute of that conversation that you're having with a friend. Fine, it's all fine. So it's important to understand that brands, companies, organizations, they do have relationships with people just like people have relationships with people. And as soon as you start spinning, as soon as you just put up the walls, or start to say things that don't seem true, you're going to lose that relationship. And another thing to keep in mind too is that a brand is no longer something that is pushed out there. It's not pushed out the door. It's not a commercial on TV. It's not a jingle. It's an experience. And it's a collection of experiences of customers, day in and day out. So this is what we're trying to capture now. We're trying to steer that. We're trying to package that, but we're not in control of that conversation. And really, we don't want to be anymore. So the future is only going more toward honest. There is a thought that in the future, everything will be transparent, because right now we're already kind of headed there where you can see what experiences are like, you can see what products are like based on peers. Now if you want a job somewhere, you can go online and see what the real story is. Everything is kind of opening up. There are vehicles for all of these things that allow for nothing but truth. And anything that a company tries to do to counter that is going to be disastrous for them. So, I just wanted to close by saying thank you so much for coming. I had a great time, and I love this place, and I hope everybody in the back could hear me throughout the conversation. Good. But really just wonderful, and thank you so much for putting it together. I'm here for questions for as long as we need to be. So, yes. Refresh me, who's in it?
It's Dudley Moore and Daryl.
It's familiar, yeah.
Dudley Moore is a creative director for an advertising agency, and he has a mental breakdown. So he goes to an institution,
yeah.
and he continues to write honest you know, and he started getting so much more success just because people started relating to it. It's like, okay, this is real. They're not trying to spin it to me.
Yeah.
This is the truth. And that's all I can think about doing your presentation is that it's exactly what they're saying. Is, you know, there needs to be a connection and not just a spin of this is always awesome.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's a great point, and really the experience of him going to a mental institution that's quite real too, because I think when you have people in marketing who continually just try to spin around and cover things up, it's very difficult to go home and look in the mirror and feel really good about what you do and what your purpose is every day. So you know, we think about that as an agency as well, that we want to work with like-minded organizations and companies that want to tell the truth, that want to be authentic, because if we're out of sync, if we're out of line with that, it just is not going to work, and it's not going to work from a client agency relationship, but it's not going to work from a results point of view either. So, you know, it helps us all sleep better at night as well. Yeah.
Big fan of honesty. I'm sure a lot of people are. Along with honesty comes this necessity of trust as well. And I'm curious to hear how you and your team navigate. You talked about you often talk to customers and people who may not always be used to being approached for their genuine input. And you see this not just in advertising, but in development agencies and in-house. I guess I'm just curious how you go about gaining the trust of the consumer as an ad agency or a development agency. How do you develop that trust to actually get the genuine feedback?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and what we are able to do is we enter as a neutral third party. So we don't necessarily go on behalf of the client. We allow for that sounding board. We're saying, hey, you know what, we're just here to hear the truth. We just want you to be as honest as possible with us. You know, it's not, they're going to say things to us that they're not willing to say directly to the face of those that they're talking about. So that allows us to really have a lot of leeway and flexibility to start those conversations. And we try to start the conversations in sort of a, you know, we talk about the filtered thing. So we start asking some of those basic questions, and then as things kind of go deeper, we ask the harder questions or the more open-ended questions about, you know, what are, you know, getting into their passions, getting into their relationships with the brand, and getting into not just the experiences. We don't want to be a complaint line. We just want to start to unravel and uncover those truths. So we ask a set number of questions, but then we always kind of have that kind of secondary conversation that starts to draw out those stories, where at the end, they didn't even realize how much they sort of talked about, but we just gave them the time to do so. So, you know, I think anything long form allows for that sort of truth telling. So if you guys are fans of long form podcasts, I listen to a bunch of them. You know, it's way better than the nightly news that gives you like 3 minutes, right? And it's just, here's cliche, platitude, yelling. But you listen to somebody for 2 hours, and then suddenly by like an hour and a half into it, they're starting to kind of talk about things that you're very surprised that they're willing to talk about because they're comfortable. So it kind of works that way.
As honesty and authenticity-based marketing becomes more popular as a successful model, do you notice more like traditional spin-oriented agencies trying to capitalize on that and emulate that without the actual authenticity behind it? And then how do you think as a consumer, like what are the red herrings that point at?
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, then no. If you watch any sort of commercial television, which very few people are these days, you'll notice that there's a lot of campaigns, and there's a lot of campaigns, especially these days, that are almost apology tour campaigns. Uber's doing one right now. We watch. What's that? Papa John's. Yeah, exactly. So it starts to become this. We're not as bad as you think we are because they had the issues before, but consumers are wait and see. And customers are sort of more wait and see. It's you know, are they going to authentically tell this truth, or are they just kind of giving this to me as a kind of a new face to something that is the same company, the same way of doing business. Actually was Domino's Pizza did a better job of it years ago in a more commercial way, because they said, they came right out and said, our pizza's not very good. Which was pretty revolutionary at the time for somebody to say, you know what, our product kind of sucks, but we're working on it, we're working with you on it, we're trying to get it better. That was a successful campaign, but because they actually acted instead of just kind of covered it up with words. And Facebook just did one as well. So, just making sure that the actions come first, then the message comes based on the actions and the actual experiences, not we're changing everything for the better. I'm not ready to hear that. So change it, make it better, and then start talking about it.
You must be talking about Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo is another one. Yeah, what is it?
We've been swindling you for 150 years, but last year we started to do it.
Yeah, in fact, it's all the way down to their tagline, right? I forget the year, but it's like founded in 1870 and refounded or reestablished in 2018. And it's like, okay. But again, to prove it on a day-to-day basis, gather those stories of you proving it, and then come out and say it. I think it's okay to be vulnerable. I think it's okay to say, we messed up. We're working on it. But don't go that extra step and say, and here's all the things that you're going to see as a result. It's like, no, we're not ready for that yet. Just be sorry, improve it, and move on.
How do you see this relating to all the election advertising?
It's one thing I'll never touch is political ads. But I think this is one, unfortunately, where spin still seems to carry the day, and it's disappointing because politicians have tried to do the honest thing and gotten their doors blown off. So it is still this negative campaigning that takes place, especially in these weeks leading up to the election day. It just accelerates. It's more negative. That they're inundating you to the point of confusion. So, I just want to see at some point some major politician just be vulnerable, put themselves out there, warts and all. I'm not perfect. I'm trying, and they win, and then we can change what's happening. But that's one sector of our business that I don't know if it'll ever change by the nature of the product.
So I love that you keep mentioning vulnerability, because it's interesting to me that I've had several conversations related to vulnerability in the same context, that when you tell the true stories, when you are vulnerable, people, and do it in a safe space where people understand your actions, shore up your words, it really does create that opportunity and opening for just groundedness, and like you just get to a better sense of who that person is, who the product is, who that company is. And I think that is a place, it just feels, I think people feel that quality more.
Yeah, and it seems to be an oxymoron to be vulnerable and commercial. But it's important to do so, and we just, again, we think of brands and companies as how can we treat this as a relationship like any other relationship that somebody has, and what do they expect out of that relationship? What do they want? So it is impossible to have a best friend who's not a vulnerable person to you. It's impossible to have a relationship with a brand who doesn't put themselves out there in different ways and doesn't kind of put that perfect picture forward. As you think about, especially on social media, going back to the beginning of this conversation, think about those friends that put themselves out there as perfect, and then understand what their real life is like as well. They're just like the rest of us. They're just living day to day. So it's important to know that we respect brands that understand that it's not always perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. So we have to navigate around that. Any other questions? Awesome. Oh, one in the back.
This is illustrating
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, just one word changes and the entire meaning changes. It's like our best is just inherently what we do, but we're not trying to brag or put ourselves out there as number one and we're better than them, and we're just trying really hard, and we're trying really hard on your behalf. There's something very kind of humble and nice about and approachable about that. When people say they're the best, you got to prove it. And every experience better be the best. But if it's our best, I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway. Cool.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.